No.
That's what I told you.
Right?
Yeah, so it was. Yeah. Oh. Hi, Wanda, can you hear us? Emily, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear now.
Okay, good. Okay, Emily, our first applicant is not present, so we've moved on to your case. So if you would like to present your case, please.
Sure. So is it okay if I share my screen? Will you guys be able to see that?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. Give me 1 second.
Are you trying to share your screen or
I'm
what?
trying. Yes, I'm trying to. So it looks like I am unable to do a screen share. I know that my partner David is actually parking and walking up to the room as we speak, and he has printed all of our supporting documentation as well. If I'm not able to share my screen, I'll just get started introducing what the project is and what we're asking for.
Okay, why don't you do that?
Yeah, so basically to provide context and background, the property at 3075 6th Avenue was purchased in June of 2022. And we believed at the time of purchase that we'd be able to operate it as a multifamily property, as the ordinance at that time was read that way. The ordinance was revised in April 2023 to allow a maximum of a 2-family use. And what we're requesting is the change in code has caused a hardship. So we would like to be considered to allow the property to be used as a multifamily property.
Okay. Okay, you can, but okay. So, how about the 14 studio apartments, for which you're going to need a variance for square footage, because you really can't fit 14 apartments in there by code?
So it is my understanding that the maximum, or I'm sorry, the minimum amount of square footage as it currently is written, the 14 apartments would not fit into that.
Right. You need 700 square feet per unit. You have 14 units. And you don't have enough square footage.
Okay, so we can discuss that and look into that with the architect that we have retained for the property. We do have conceptual drawings at this time. So if 700 is the minimum that we're, that we can put in there, we could certainly, discuss that with the architect that we have retained.
Which would be going with less or fewer apartments. Fewer apartments in order to not need variance. You don't have to put 14 apartments in. as opposed to the logic of your use variance request, which was a hardship, you say, because of the purchase and then the changing of the variance. Nobody says you have to put in 14 apartments. Your partner is here, by the way, standing, so if you wanna tweet and let him do it. Emily. If you could just introduce yourself and turn the microphone on, please.
Hi, everybody. I'm David Downer with Shades Contract.
Okay. All right, go ahead, Katie.
It's actually a question for Angie. The old code, they would not have needed the use variance. Would they still have needed the area variance for the square
I'm not
footage?
sure, the old code, the problem would have been density,
Okay,
but I didn't check on that.
okay,
Yeah, the problem.
okay, because it wouldn't have changed from having 700 square feet per unit. That would still have been the
No,
same.
no, this is just for the 700 square feet is for the new code.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that, we don't know how that changed from the old code.
We don't know how that changed.
So was the old code also 700?
No, the old
Okay.
code, we have parameters for like determining density, and that was okay, but for the new. code, we
It
don't have
just
density
goes by.
requirement.
Gotcha. Okay,
So that is the
so it's hard to know.
density.
Okay, but taking that a step further, my question is, the square footage per unit is something that code enforcement would also look at. I mean, you can't cram too many things into a building.
Right.
And so therefore, being that we're in the new code now, if code enforcement were to go up to this building and had 14 units in there, and they didn't come up to the code as it stands now, then that wouldn't work. Regardless of what the previous code said, or, yeah, what the ordinance, regardless of what the previous ordinance said.
Right, so that's.
But right now, you need 700 square feet regardless.
Density issue, and there probably would have been a variance for the density needed.
Yeah,
You're still cramming. 14
Right.
Apartments into,
but you're putting in 14, so they need 700 square feet. And if you don't have them, and you don't get the variance, then the code is gonna say you have to go with less apartments. To 700 square feet.
And there's no way to get to that variance. So I missed that as I walked in. So to get to that variance of saying, if we can get to the 12 or 14 apartments, are you saying that that is just completely not? So because we don't know. Huh?
Because we have to be specific.
Yeah.
You can say 12, 14.
I'm sorry, 14. A specific number, 14. Yeah, 14.
So this is based on 14 units.
Yeah.
Not 12.
14, yeah. Yeah, so I brought this, the conceptual what I have that he did the site review and everything on was based on the size of the building, knowing that he could fit in comfortably the 14 units, including some of the space, and then still leave other space in the building to use, just for whatever other space in the building, because there's a full basement, there's other usable space that we actually wanted to consider down the road, maybe doing something more, like put a small business or something in there. So there's a lot of room in that building. So when he did the site review that he would have done to be able to produce these drawings, it was based on obviously being able to fit the maximum of units that we could fit comfortably without, any health issues, any hazard issues, fire issues, so on and so forth.
Okay.
So the stamp, the set I have is already stamped. So that means he already did his review. He already did all that. All that stuff was already done in that portion of it.
Yeah, but
But was it,
probably he was not looking at 700 square feet per unit.
Okay.
Probably was 660 feet,
Okay.
but our code requires 700.
700. Okay.
If you don't have a 700, you have to ask for a waiver. and
Yeah.
That's why you are here.
Right.
You are here because I included a second part of it because you are not meeting that requirement.
Right.
And since you are already here, you have to meet that requirement before you are registered,
Okay.
before you can go for your permit.
Okay.
and
So,
with the old code, the 14 would have been okay.
I don't know that the 14 would have been okay because
It would have been a multi, right?
Yes, so probably would have, density. We are calculating
Not the use
density.
though.
I'm not,
I think we have a specific number now,
Right.
whereas before it was more of a gauge, of what does density mean?
Right.
And I think we're still talking about density.
Well,
we
Yeah.
are still talking about density, yes, right. But in a different, we are using a different term to measure density.
Right, we
Mhm.
have an exact
Yeah.
number now. Yeah,
Right.
Even the old code, the density will increase not the number of units and then the lot size.
right. Right.
Yeah, but this one, especially, I don't think we are using the lot size. I'm not sure, but I don't do that.
Not the lot size, but the
area, but yeah.
building size.
So for the
Okay.
old code, probably we could still need it, I'm not sure, because I think,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wouldn't the question be how many square feet wide or large the building is?
Yeah.
70-21.
Huh?
That's in the 720. 70-21 is how much?
My name's Eric Carrano. I'm a code officer in the city.
Oh, it's existing.
Hello.
So,
Yeah, good.
the old code was subject to, density, as you're sort of aware. And that really would have been an occupant load,
Mhm.
spatial, square footage,
Yeah.
mostly to bedrooms. But, that's the difference between.
So basically, you'd have to have, you can only have 10 apartments, but they each have to be 700 square feet, because it's only got 7,021 square feet in the building.
Detail,
Oh,
actually.
well, that's what it says here.
But
But if presuming what I'm reading is correct, then I would be correct in saying they could only do 10 apartments, right? Yeah, if the 7,021 is correct. You can't do any more, or you could get a variant. I mean, if they do 14 apartments, you're gonna go in there and say, get rid of 4 of them.
So what has been trending right now is the move towards micro units, which
Right.
I assume is kind of the
That's what-
motivation behind the 700 square foot requirement. So,
Right,
yes, you're correct in your assessment.
yeah, okay.
But the previous code would have been based on occupancy, which is subject to New York State codes and standards.
Yeah, okay, so, but now we're up to 700 square foot per unit.
so is 700 the standard measurement for a micro unit?
No, a micro unit would be significantly small.
Oh.
Yeah.
Studio apartment is what they're calling it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
some micro units will
So 400, it's another proposal.
and what code says is that occupants, bedroom sizes, right? The smallest square footage for a bedroom size can be 70 square feet. No smaller, otherwise they would need a density variance or some sort of variance, right? But, 2 bedrooms, for example, or a one bedroom with 2 people in it would have to be no less than 100 square feet. So it's not exactly like the gauge that you would utilize, but it gives you an idea of
Right,
what the previous occupant load situation would have been sort of centered around.
right. Thank you very much. Very helpful.
Can I ask a quick follow-up?
Surely,
So the building right now as it exists has over 20-something rooms in it. So let's say it was being used as a single room occupancy building, which I think in the past it was at some point. Let's say. if we
right, it
came
was a
in-
rectory.
Right, so we came
Or
in
convent.
and we were gonna make no changes. Let's say you want to use the building as is. So you're cramming, see, I don't even use the expression cram, but you're putting in potentially more.
Well, there were
than 20
bedrooms,
something.
there are bedrooms in there now, aren't they? They're not 21 apartments. It's 21 bedrooms because it was a convent.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is you would be more, you would have more occupancy than you would. So actually, it's actually de-densifying the building to do that. Because if we came in and asked for it as is, we're actually still at that same, actually more than the density to do it for single room occupancy, plus to have staff who's gonna be in there. So the
Yeah,
actual.
look, we're not doing
Now, is
So-
that?
density anymore.
No,
See
it's
apartments?
not. And we
Okay. So
specifically
I
did not
think I
want to
have-
do that.
So
Okay.
if it, assuming it was 20 units
Mhm.
of 20
Or
bedroom
more, yeah,
and
more than.
you keep it as it is,
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with it. But as soon as you try to do something with it, you come for a permit, it has to conform to code now.
Right.
Mhm.
Because if it is 20 units, it means it's non-conforming, you can use it as you want, as it exists. But as soon as you come to code for permit or something, it has to conform now. So that is a problem.
You can't have it
If
with
you are-
the, like, you have to
even-
have a kitchen, you can't have a kitchen in each one of those bedrooms or, you know what I mean? It's bedrooms is what it is.
Yeah.
Like a boarding house, yeah, right, SROs or whatever, but you don't want to do that. You want different apartments. So according to the code, the way I see it, the most you can have is 10. Unless we grant the variance, but I have to, well, okay, I won't go there.
So assuming we were asking for the old code. So if it were the old code, it says for multifamily, the density is 40 units per acre. It means, when I did a calculation for this, you come to 21. So I think he would have been good with the old code.
Okay,
It will be 21, his density will be 21, and he's not above the 40.
okay. All right, so that just kind of puts it in perspective for me a
Yeah.
little bit. I have a question for Lena. The fact that the code changed while they owned the building before they got their permits, how does that? Oh, sure. Come into play? Like, do we still need financials if?
You do need to still assess it under the current code, but what I would say is typically when you look at the self-created hardship aspect of a use variance in particular, one of the factors that we've seen previously with other applications is that they will come forward and say they bought the land knowing that it was zoned X,
Yeah.
but they want to do Y. That is a
Right.
self-created hardship. We
Okay.
have the opposite situation here.
Right.
So I think that they would actually perhaps meet that criteria. All other things,
Okay,
similar, and there's not any other aspect of the application that would indicate that it's a self-created hardship. So that would actually,
Look at the financials.
no, the financials is a separate factor. So for a use variance, it's not a balancing test. They have to meet each and every one of the factors, but they would essentially have met the self-created hardship unless there's something else.
one, the code.
But you have to assess it under the new code because that's what it is.
Correct. So, but what I'm saying is if they don't meet the financial under the new code,
but
then it
they,
doesn't make any difference then.
but they're making the argument that they did not create that. the
That's the
financial.
self-created though.
Those are
not the
two separate
financial.
criteria.
Right.
So just because it's not self-created doesn't mean that they don't have to prove financials. They still
Right.
have to prove financials and self-create, or, and that it's not self-created.
So we could say you are correct. It was not self-created because you bought it when you thought it was legit to do it, but as far as the financial aspect of why you cannot,
Recognize
Yeah.
valuable return.
right, why you can't recognize the return on,
Before we get to that, the not self-created, I have a question. Granted, they bought it under the new code. Or
the old code.
But you're reserving a significant amount of space for potential future uses,
Yes.
which are unclear, may or may not happen. And why, if there is this issue of density and livability, why can't some of that space be used for the residents?
Because the design is based off of can I come over there?
Yeah.
Show you something? So you're looking at just.
But until,
You're looking at this is where you enter
Right,
off of 60. This is the
Okay.
main border that goes this way.
right.
So each one of these rooms is just chopped into a small, I think there's actually.
but if they don't. Okay, but if they don't get the financial. If they don't have the financial proof that they need a use variance, it doesn't make any difference how many apartments they want to put in.
Yeah.
Right?
Right, but
It is-
saying, yeah,
Okay, officially having a private conversation, which is good for the rest of us. Second of all, no, what I also wanted to say was, if you don't get the use variance, for which you're gonna have to prove your financial hardship, then it doesn't make any difference how many apartments you want to get in, because we're not gonna get into the area variance. So rather than waste our time on the area variance piece of it, which is the density, if we don't get the use variance,
think it wasn't really a side, he was just pointing out.
I understand that, but I'm just saying, but we have to deal with the use variance first, and the use variance is whether or not what you have to prove in the use variance is that your financials show that you couldn't make a go of this property with the uses that are allowed in that zone. So that's what we have to look at first. And then once we decide that,
The uses, can I jump in?
yeah, absolutely, for the financial thing, absolutely.
For the uses part of it, if you're looking at the justification of it,
Yep.
you couldn't actually turn that, let's say even just, I think there's one classification that has it as a 2-family house. That's what
Mhm.
actually the main one it's under right now. Let's say we just stayed at that. You're taking a over 7,000 square foot building and making it a 2-unit. So you're creating two units of 3,000 for the space at a tax rate of this so there's no family that's gonna live in there at the capacity and load of you just wouldn't do that. That's not, it's not a logical move to do that. And then also the actual turn of the financials to be able to actually, the rent you would have to charge, if you're talking about covering the cost of the building of that, the rent you'd have to charge wouldn't even land on the FMR HUD rate that most people are charging in the area now, because there's no such building in that capacity of that. So now you're talking about driving the rent way. So there wouldn't even be a way
Driving
to
yourself
gauge
out
it.
of, right.
Right. So, right, in that neighborhood, yeah. So you're kind of at a loss for there, even if you went that route, and kept it that route. So, and that's being modest, construction costs, what they are, things of that nature. So, and we do, personally, like we own a construction company like Chase Contract, we do residential, commercial construction. So we're very familiar with construction costs. So we know like where the needle is with that. So if you're taking that and basing off just that, we would almost have to like go up in units to get to that point.
I'm just curious, I teach at school too, which is in North Central.
Yeah.
So this is the area that my families live in.
Cool.
Do you find a need in this area for studio apartments?
Yes. So we work a lot with Joseph's House, for example.
Okay.
We provide some housing for them. They have a family or a tract that comes through it's called the Bethune program. They don't have a lot of people that can fit that, because a lot of apartments are smaller. They have certain size requirements, things of that nature. So they have a specific tract there that they have, but they're actually trying to push more there's not much home ownership. A lot of the buildings they are what they are. They're the old buildings. They've been owned for decades, and they are what they are. Then you have another tract that comes through them that people are just looking for 1-bedroom or a studio apartment just to kind of get started and then move on to that next phase. So being next to, the reason I'm using them as an example is being next to the school, the charter school. We spoke directly with them. We're familiar with the staff there. So we've spoken with them a lot. When we talked to them and actually showed them some of the designs and the schematics of the drawings, they actually looked at us and said, this would actually be great. We potentially might even have some of our staff be able to come here, live, work, whether it's their interns. So, that idea was floated out in the conversation because they even found a need for it. They were happy that when we said we weren't going to do an SR Hoka, they're like, they had some issues with it. I don't know, whoever was occupying before, whatever happened. So they just had issues because it's right next to that charter school, that elementary school. So they were very happy with the concept and the idea. So, okay, well, we can produce something because they even saw a benefit of that. Okay. So I definitely do see that. And there's not much in the way of, it's most of the 2 families, if they're really smart, people try to chop them a lot.
Yes.
So you're getting studio apartments that are not even 300 square feet. That's.
If I may, I also wanted to just chime in as well, because we own and manage other rental properties in this specific neighborhood in North Central. And we have heard time and time again that there are many people, potential tenants, that are priced out of downtown Troy. And they are looking for something more affordable. So they are starting to search for affordable apartments, like a young professional demographic. They are also looking for more affordable apartments because they have, and verbatim, I have heard that they have been priced out of downtown Troy. So I just wanted to throw that in there because I do think that there is a market for studio apartments.
Okay.
Right, and it's a very good point.
To one more route.
Sure.
To Emily's point, we were just showing a one-bedroom apartment a block over from where the rectory is. And they said, and it was actually the amount of RPI students, the people who would normally be in that area, more on the Hoosick and down to that area. This is within the last month, and they're coming. I was like, we just can't find apartments that we can afford, like actual quality apartments. So that's just to Emily's point on that.
Okay. Do we have any more questions from the? Do we have the people in the? I think all of you people, are you here to speak to this proposal? Yeah, right. Pardon me? No, you can't. First of all, you got to come up and ask the question. But okay, come ahead. Yeah, you have to come up and introduce yourself. Nothing simple in this world. Yeah.
Eric Vale, how many parking spaces?
You have to, did you introduce yourself? I'm sorry, I didn't hear it. Did you say it so I can hear it, please? I have to write it down.
Erica Vale.
Okay. Go ahead. And the question is, how many parking spaces?
So right now we don't own outright. There's a lot next to us that is we use for parking, and then there's a combination that we're working on with the school to be able to use some of their parking for like an overnight. So we haven't come to any final decision on that yet, but we're working on something like that. Where the logistics of, let's say when they're in school, the time frame proposed at a certain time frame that we'd be out by. And then because we're on a main bus line and thoroughfare, and most of the people who are there potentially be able to take advantage of that existing. So that's why.
And how is this for zoning?
Excuse me, I don't know.
Parking requirement.
There is no
Within
parking,
the
right,
code.
in that area. Okay, is anybody on Zoom here to speak to this proposal? Okay. So, and anybody from the board have any further questions or?
Oh, I have just two.
Sure, go ahead, Evie.
Any assessment of traffic flow issues, with these apartments?
So as of right now, no. One of the conversations that we talked to the school about is if they have their drop off and pick up
Right.
in there, but it wouldn't interfere. What we would be doing wouldn't really interfere with them because they already have their set time, their drop offs and pick offs. So in theory,
On River Street?
they do. Yeah, they come down River Street and they come up, and they're already in the process of making their own. It's probably going to come before you guys at some point. I know I don't remember what her title was, but at the school, but one of the folks I was talking to, she was saying that they're going to be working out a plan, like a traffic plan to come off the river, go up Dow, which is what they're doing now, and then have like more.
Okay, that probably would come to us, but
Oh, well-
probably from somebody in the city.
Somebody.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So they're already working that part out. So
Okay,
what where we are, and also just to speak to Erica's question again, the population that the people, we're not looking to bring new population in. There's a lot of people already within the city of Troy that would already be utilizing bus lines, biking, things of that nature.
just need a better
be able
place to
to
live.
actually, yeah, they're just looking for a quality. place to
Yeah.
live. So that's what, I don't know if that helps answer your question.
Okay, what's your question?
Is, what is your, how do you classify affordable housing? The document you had here was based on a fair market rent of $15.98 for a 3-bedroom home.
So and Emily can speak to this too. So what happens with a lot of landlords, they price off of the HUD's FMR, fair market rate. So that's what that is coming from. The FMR is the fair market rate from HUD. So we would try to get, our plan is to utilize certain grants and things that are available to help offset the construction costs so that we're not going to, the costs will still be what they are from a construction standpoint, but it will help offset some of that you don't need to then pass back on to the tenant or potential person at whoever your end user is. You don't have to pass that back on to them. So you're gonna still kind of be in that line of like, all right, we're not.
To make
pricing
it
people
more
out, but
affordable.
Yeah, to make it more. Yeah. But it's based off of that, the HUD FMR, like that's all based off that. So even if we were, as a private landlord, you could base a lot of your rent off of that. So if you kind of, like Emily said, we, owning and managing other properties in the area, we know what those numbers are. Some
Right.
are absolutely ridiculously high for not inequality at all.
Right.
So, we would try to be below that or somewhere in that range.
Have you,
Okay, Katie?
and decisions aren't contingent on this, but I'm just wondering if you've thought about offering incentives to tenants for people who would use the bus and not bring a car, or people who would utilize bikes, maybe putting a a safe bike room in the building so that they can store them.
So I'm smiling because I just had this conversation with
Oh.
so on one of the references is you'll see on the back, it's a commissioner in Albany does all the planning in the parks that they're redoing Albany. So I actually had that conversation. How could we actually use, whether it's landscaping the front, doing something in space to encourage it? And that question came up and it said, bike racks, like utilizing something with bike racks in the front, utilizing something in the building, just something to encourage that so that people are, because it is I mean, with all the biking and everything that's going on, you have all that available to you already. So why not just
Right.
encourage that? So that is actually a plan as part of like our landscape
Okay.
idea.
Also, it's also worth noting too, I had done some research on the CDPHP bicycle rack program as well. And I found that there's actually the CDPHP bike racks on either side of this property. So I think it's a wonderful idea to offer some kind of incentive to help purchase, those CDPHP bike passes. We could offer 1 or 2 months rent, something like that, to help encourage that bike use.
Yeah, but I thought it was CDTA.
No.
Oh, okay,
I think
Right.
CTA has a different program.
Okay.
That I heard. That's probably.
all right.
Thankfully, there's a
It's a good idea. Whoever does it. Okay, do we have any further, Angie?
Yes, I wanted to clarify on the density for the old code.
Mhm.
So I did stated that he wouldn't need it, but I did my calculations wrong. Yes, he would, if it were the old code, he would need density.
So they
Because
still would have needed to
He-
come.
Yes, he
Okay.
still, with the number of units, yes.
Question from Zoom.
Yes. Who is this from?
This is Wayne Thomas Oaks.
Under what? Wayne Thomas Oaks, under Wanda?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Wayne.
What is the cost to the residents for parking on the adjacent property? Like, is there any sort of estimate of cost to residents, or is it free? And how many parking spaces would be available on the adjacent property?
Well, parking spaces are not part of the
The zoning
part of
ordinance.
the zoning ordinance any longer. So, and people park wherever they want, and there is no, parking restriction in Troy except on the days that they're going to clean the streets. So in front of that property, I think it might be Tuesdays, but I wouldn't swear to it. Tuesday afternoons, you can't park on that side of the street. That area. Signs are very well posted as to when you can't park there. You park wherever you want.
But
In that
applicant-
section of the city.
The applicant did mention being in discussion with the charter school about possibly at some point using their lot for the overnight parking when the students are not in session.
But he doesn't have to prove that in order to get his variance. That would just be. Residents, but it's not something that he has to prove. Sections of the city you'd have to already have it worked out before you could get the variance. Does that answer your question? Evidently. Okay, do we have any further questions, or are we ready to vote on the use variance, or what? Secret? Katie?
Madam Chair, for PLZBA 2023-0033. 34, I'm sorry. I'd ask the board find this proposal to be an unlisted action with sufficient information available upon which to make a determination that the project is not expected to cause significant environmental impact.
We have a second on that motion?
Second.
Okay, Evie seconds on the motion, all in favor? Aye, opposed, carried. On use variance. Anybody want to take a crack at that?
Madam Chair. For PLZBA 2023-0034. On the use variance, this would be a motion to approve. I believe that the applicant has given us a financial justification that they would not be able to realize a reasonable return with the current use in that neighborhood. I believe the hardship is unique to this property. The hardship was not self-created because the purchase of the building was prior to the code change, and prior to that, the use variance would not have been necessary. I believe that the character of the neighborhood would not be impacted detrimentally. From what we've seen from the drawings and the renderings, they do look to be beautiful apartments. It's always a good thing to provide affordable housing in a neighborhood. And for those reasons, this is a positive motion to approve the use variance.
Okay, do we have a well, I'm sorry.
Can I do the area?
I don't know. Can you do aren't they two separate, the use and the area?
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so on the use variance, do I have a second for the use variance? Jack seconds on the motion, Edie? Andy? Okay, Jack McCann? Kathy Conroy, approve? Katie McLaren? Approve. Okay, so you got the use variance, you're halfway home. Now, for the area variance. Are you gonna do that one too, Katie? Since you started it?
Madam Chair, for the use variance in this case, this is a positive motion to approve. I don't believe an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood. It's going to fill a vacant building. I believe that the applicant showed us that they cannot achieve by some other method, they are not going to be able to feasibly achieve their goal. I don't believe it's going to have an adverse effect on the neighborhood or the conditions in the neighborhood. And again, we've said that the difficulty was not self-created in this case.
Okay, we have a second on that motion?
Second.
Evie seconds, and on the motion, Jack McCann? Kathy Conroy, yes. Evie Dande?
Yes.
And Katie McLaren? Okay, so there you go. Good luck. Congratulations. Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now it is 10 minutes to 7, and I believe no one from Rosenblum has arrived yet. Oh, who's on Zoom? Oh, are you a Rosen? I thought you were, okay. Yes.
He is.
Okay, so do we have on Zoom the person who is representing Rosenblum?
Yes, Jeff Morel here, principal, and my sincere apologies. We put a calendar hold based on what was on the website, and apparently that had changed. So our sincere apologies for not being in person.
All right, well, I guess we'll accept that. Okay,
Thank you.
Go ahead, do you want to give your presentation?
Sure, and my colleague, Zach Gold, who's our development manager, is also here with us.
Would I just interrupt you for 1 second?
Sure.
For you, Madam Chair?
I can't concentrate because, I mean, I apologize. It's a quirk of mine, but I can't stand a squeaking chair. Obviously. Okay, so, sorry, Mr. Morel, go ahead.
No, that's perfectly all right.
Go ahead.
So in effect, I think my colleague will bring up our presentation slide. I don't know if you wanted to us to sort of review the overall project first.
I don't think that that's necessary for us. We're just here to discuss the setbacks.
Wonderful. Okay, very good. Well, then in effect, our request is basically we're constructing a multifamily building, obviously located between Fifth Avenue and Union. Because it is a through lot under the existing zoning, we would be required to treat both Fifth Avenue and Union Ave facades as effectively front yards rather than rear yards. We are conforming on Fifth Ave. The building screens the entire length of the property line effectively and is within the 10-foot maximum setback that is required. What we are requesting in terms of the variance is actually to effectively treat Union as a rear setback. So that would require a variance of 43 foot for the front yard setback and a parking setback, which is proposed at 4 feet, which would be a variance of 26 feet. And what that in effect, well, that's basically the requests.
So these requests are for Union Street, basically.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Does anybody from the board have any questions of the applicant?
Yes, so I wanted to let them probably amend their application because the last one that I received, the first one, maximum front setback was for 42 feet, and now they're saying 43 feet, so.
Okay, but that's still on the Union Street side.
So, but I want to.
Yeah, right, okay, I saw the 42 and he said 43, but, okay, so it's only a foot different, but this is all on the Union Street side. Fifth Avenue side is fine. Correct? Angie? Yes, okay. So that being the case, is there anybody here to speak in support of the program or the project? And people who wish to speak in opposition? And I realize that there's more than one person in opposition, but I would ask unless somebody has something different to say, we just go for a show of hands after the one person speaks. You're welcome to get up and speak if you have something different to say from the people ahead of you. Go ahead.
My name is Richard Webster. I'm an attorney with the firm of Tour and Barone in Albany. We've been retained by a group of residents in the area who believe this project is not a particularly good project, and that in particular, this variance should not be granted. I sent in a letter last week.
Yes, we got it. Yep, we got it. Yep.
So just to run through it quickly, the real problem here is that this is a development that's getting a grant to improve the neighborhood, and it's just not taking the opportunity to do that.
It's not what?
It's not taking the opportunity to do that.
Oh,
Instead of enhancing both Fifth Avenue and Union Street, it's treating Union Street basically as an alley rather than a street. And it's failing to connect the existing buildings that are on Union Street. So I don't think the developer will dispute that, but the question is why? And the reality is, if you look at the application, there's no reason given why. As you know, in order to get a variance, you have to demonstrate why you can't install a conforming building. There's been no demonstration of that whatsoever. The developer says he wants to retain 17 parking spaces, but he could retain 17 parking spaces and still conform to zoning. So, and the fact that the building has to then be narrower than it otherwise would be, because the developer leaves a large area for parking, then pushes the height up. And then the height causes damage to the community in the area because of shading and high density. And I should note, by the way, that the smallest apartments in this building are 400 square feet. I wasn't previously aware of a requirement for 700 square feet apartment.
It's not, depending upon, well, I shouldn't interrupt. Go ahead. Yeah, but it's different.
Oh, well, okay. So the basic problem is that the narrowness of the building causes it to be higher, which causes community impacts. And then the failure to have a facade along Union Street means that what was a historic street that provided access to the station will effectively be treated as an alley and will become even more of a problem than it is already. There is an opportunity here to restore it, to improve it, and the developer just hasn't shown why that can't be done. The parking places could be incorporated within the building, and the facades could be put along the two sides of the street. That way we'd have a much better building. This board has a duty to ensure that variances aren't handed out willy-nilly. They're only handed out when they're essential, and no showing of essential here.
Okay, thank you.
Last couple of things. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, may indulge me with a couple of other things. So there's a couple of things under SECRA I'd like to mention. Visual impacts not been done. Traffic impact, no foundation. There's been a assertion that the traffic impacts would be insignificant, but there's been no study of that issue at all. So I hope that you will hear the pleas, and I should finally mention that one element of granting variances is whether the neighbors are in favor or not. Here we've presented a petition showing that hundreds of neighbors are
They're
actually
not
against
neighbors,
this
but
project.
that's okay.
Some are neighbors,
And some aren't.
hundreds. There's, I think, 200 and something, of
Okay.
which
Go ahead.
at least 150 are neighbors. Okay, so there's plenty of people opposed to this project, and they're opposed to it for good reason, because it's not going to restore their neighborhood as it's supposed to. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Webster. Anybody else to speak in opposition? Come ahead.
Hello, it's Wayne Thomas Oaks again.
Oh, no, excuse me. We have someone here in the audience who's speaking.
Okay,
I'm sorry. Go ahead. State your name and address for the records, please.
Jerry DeSev. I live at 1833 Fifth Avenue, which is directly across the street from the proposed project.
Okay,
First of all, we're not opposed to the entire project. We are saying we will accept something that is in harmony with our historic neighborhood, which would be building height, which is something that's similar to the buildings that were torn down before.
okay, I don't want to, but we're dealing with setbacks on Union Street.
So the Union Street side will essentially become a parking lot, and that will be sort of placed next to the wonderful Finney building that is planning to have an outdoor cafe and plantings, et cetera, which will enhance. Union
Next to
Street.
where?
The Finney Design Building, which is going up, which is already there, but they're redesigning the building. So
Okay.
they are planning plantings and outdoor cafe, and they are really giving attention to making it an attractive street. On the other side, you have the Gurley Building, which is a tall, ornate, historic building.
Right.
So in between that, what you'll have essentially is a parking lot, which does nothing to enhance the Union Street side. and it takes away actually, because what will happen is the wonderful trees that are there will also be torn down. So I am opposed to this variance because it is going to do nothing to enhance Union Street. And it is going to cause a lot of harm in our neighborhood because it will be a massive, massive building that's going to be looming at us, a 4-story building that's going to be almost as high as the church steeple across the street.
Right.
It will, again, environmentally, it will have a detrimental effect because it will be cutting down more trees, but also we will lose our sunlight. Those, our buildings are far shorter than the
Right.
building that's there. So pushing that building forward will have a detrimental and effect on our health, our safety, our welfare
Right.
in that area. So
Okay. Thanks a lot, Mrs. DeSav.
thank you.
Anybody else want to speak? With a different objection? Shirley?
With Michael Flynn, I own 1827, 1829, 1831, and
Wow, which one do you live in?
1823. I used to live in 1823.
Okay.
So 31 apartments there. I just want to say that I agree with Richard Webster and I agree with Jerry DeSav, and there are other neighbors, including Wayne Oaks on Zoom, that the whole block agrees with what you first.
Right. You used to live there and then you moved up to Spring? Okay.
Yeah, no, I still own all of it.
Right, I understand that. Okay.
Born in Troy, raised in Troy, work in Troy, live in Troy.
Moved to Spring Avenue though, you defected, okay?
Bit of grass and-
Okay, yeah, okay. All right, no problem. Okay, anybody else from the audience? Okay. Okay, and you?
My name is Bruce Rubin. I live, work, and own 456 Broadway, which is right around the corner from the proposed project.
Tell me where you are again, what,
456 Broadway,
okay,
that's very
Yep.
near the intersection of
yep,
Broadway and Fifth. I'm opposed to this variance. It's for two main reasons. First of all, as they've mentioned, this parking situation and the parking variance is the start. It's the first step of the proposal, which is only 15 parking spots for a 71 apartment complex. It would flood Broadway as well as Fifth Avenue. I mean, when you see a snowball coming down the hill, it starts as a little snowball, but it keeps going bigger and bigger and bigger, then it crashes. Let's stop it when it's a small snowball. I have, even though I'm old, I've got young children, I've got an 11-year-old and a 14-year-old. I want them to have something of some nature instead of being, blown away by this. I'm an attorney. I have clients who have to see me. I have a neighbor who's been my neighbor since October of '02 when I bought the place. She cuts hair as well as other people. She has people coming in as well. When Rosenblum has talked to you about what the proposal is, they haven't told the whole story. And without a full story, it should not be proposed. I mean, it should not be granted. They haven't mentioned that there's going to be 71 apartments, a total of 15 off-street parking spots.
well, you mentioned all of that, and we're just looking at the setbacks for Union Street of this, so if there's anything else about the project that you feel hasn't been, it is going before the planning board.
We understand that, but I believe the actions of this board as well as the planning board are interlocked. And if we give in here, and I'm not even saying we have to deny it, we deny it without prejudice or continue to see what the planning board has to say. But it's people's lives. It's a beautiful neighborhood as it is now. And what the proposing has no or little regard, as council has mentioned, there's 150 signatures against it. And I understand that it's just an offset, but I mean, one person's offset it could be the start of this problem going on. My neighbor asked me to also mention that with these 71 apartments, which could end up with being 140 or more people in there, it could affect the infrastructure, sewage, water, everything. And we think it should be either tabled until this is worked out, or denied without prejudice to reopen it again. But all you're doing right now is giving them a license to kill a very beautiful, peaceful, welcoming, centuries-old neighborhood.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rubin. Anybody else wish to speak in opposition?
I mean, I'd also like to mention one thing. I think it's important that you hear from the people, even if it is somewhat repetitious. You know,
Well, it's true, but if somebody else is gonna stand up and talk about flooding Broadway, I mean, then I don't, you know, we don't have to hear that twice. You know what, and not only that, but the thing that the zoning board is dealing with, the only thing we're dealing with is that setback situation on Union Street. And the other things are all things for the planning commission to address, not us.
but, you know,
That's the only thing we can speak to.
understood.
Okay.
With all due respect,
Right.
if an action is taken here, it.
No, I understand.
So sometimes it's better to be a zero than a Nero, if you know what I mean. It's an expression, but.
Before.
Oh,
I like it.
I like the expression. Thank you very much.
By the way, Mr. Rubin. Especially if you got a kid, you know what I mean? Okay. Anybody else? We have some people on Zoom. Did you want to speak? Okay. Okay. Anybody on the other Wanda?
Yes, it's Wayne Thomas Oakes. I'd like to say a few words.
Surely.
Okay, first of all, I think that it's important to point out that the purpose of part of this variance anyways is to facilitate the small surface parking lot. And that, I know you say there are no parking standards in Troy, but it imposes a cost upon the existing community, and it offers a great deal of nonconformity with the existing neighborhood. And it actually disrupts essential character of the neighborhood. The developer has said in the past that parking is available and lightly used parking facilities up the street, but they all charge for parking. So he's going to come in and he's going to charge us for he's going to offer parking to 12 to 15 people in his building, and then the rest of us are going to be going up the street paying $75 to $150 a space for parking. It imposes the cost upon the community, and that's an important aspect of considering whether a variance should be granted or not. And he has not considered alternative designs for this project that would be in compliance with the existing zoning. He's been very resistant to offering other alternatives that would be in compliance with the existing zoning. He's designed a building to maximize return, and that return is, I think that it can be redesigned to provide a similar kind of return, financial return, without compromising the impacts upon the local community, the immediate neighborhood.
Okay, thank you very much. Would either one of the other two people like to speak? That are Zooming? Oh, the one next to Jeff is with the developer, and how about John in the end? Say, John, or do you have a position? You're a guest, or you're with Rosenblum, what?
Hi, this is John Lapper, the attorney for the applicant, if you can hear me.
Okay, all right. Well, okay, as long as we know who you are, then you're not. The attorney for the applicant, obviously you're not going to speak in opposition. Okay, so in opposition here, we have, well, I don't want to say in opposition, but concern, shall we say, whatever, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, plus the attorney, or the Mr. Webster. Yes, you're an attorney, Mr. Webster. Okay, so we have 6 people in the room and 1 on Zoom who are in opposition. And we have the applicant who perhaps would like to address some or all of the concerns that have been put forth. I would think that the most important one that would be put forth, I mean, you're welcome to say what you want, but would be the close to the last one as to the reason why you haven't been able to do something with parking so that you don't need to take up all of Union Street and distress everyone.
Sure. So again, this is John Lapper, the applicant's attorney. Can you hear me all right?
Yep, you're fine.
And I apologize. We all had this on our calendar for next week, or we would have been there in person.
That's all right.
So what we heard were kind of contradictory statements that there is a parking problem in the area, but that they don't want this lot to be used as parking. The benefit to the applicant here and to the neighborhood is to renovate and replace what's on Fifth Avenue with, a facade that is going to be a major upgrade. There's not a variance required for the 4 stories that complies with the zoning, but there is a need, even though parking is not required in this zone, there is a need for parking spaces so that it doesn't impact the neighborhood. And that's the reason for the parking lot on Union. So we feel that as a compromise, as a balancing the benefits, having the spaces on Union is a big plus for the neighborhood to provide additional parking. And the upgrade on Fifth Avenue is a big benefit because it's going to be a beautiful building. And Rosenblum Development has a history, the news, the other buildings they've done in downtown Troy have been very important assets to the city to bring the city back. And that's why this was designed with the parking, because there's a need for the parking.
Yeah, I'm also happy to address, just, I realize it's a little bit out of scope of zoning, but, to the extent of, we didn't bring support letters, but obviously we've been engaging with stakeholders for probably the last 8 months. I think the petition referenced was from November when the project was first floated, and we certainly spent a great deal of time engaging with stakeholders and have a number of homeowners on the block who are supportive of the project, as well as business owners, and they have submitted letters or testimony to that effect to the planning board. So again, I realize it's out of scope, but I think in terms of the design of the building, that's been an evolution in partnership, not only with members of the neighborhood, but also with the State Historic Preservation Office and other historic authorities, and we continue to try to create the most responsive design that we can. I know also that there's not a density limit, but I will say that one of the things that we are trying to do with this project, which will be passive house certified and all electric, probably one of the most environmentally sustainable buildings in the city. But we're also trying to, as the previous occupant is doing, to offer units at a lower price point, about 30% lower than the average rent in the capital region, in order to facilitate more access for what we call missing middle, high quality market rate apartments, and addresses a need that we know that employers are feeling painfully. Everything from filling open seats in emergency services to the tech sector that's based in downtown Troy. We did want to create a building that was responsive. There's a question about why we didn't do structured parking, similar to the previous applicant, in order to balance out those lower rents. We're trying to hit just we have to set a certain capacity to make the project feasible, and adding any parking would require us to put the building up another story, which we don't want to do. We don't think it's appropriate, even though zoning allows us to do that. I do want to just address one other point, which is, the idea that the building will loom above other buildings. This is a building height comparison, which maps the buildings across the street to our building. We've committed to attempt to lower the building as much as possible during the, evolution of the design, being as responsive again as we can to neighborhood concerns. The building is also, again, we are incorporating a setback of the building off of Fifth, which is not necessarily encouraged by the comprehensive plan or the zoning, but is allowed and is responsive to the neighborhood, as well as recreating the historic condition of the buildings that were torn down and replaced with the existing single-story abandoned bank branch.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for the applicant? No, Evie, did you?
Yes, an issue was raised with regards to at least a lack that was presented to us of a traffic study with regards to potential, congestion impacts.
That's a planning issue. Traffic study is for the planning, is a planning issue. So you might want to be prepared because you're going there.
Yes, and we did prepare a comprehensive traffic demand management plan that was prepared by our engineers and addressed not only the existing off-site and on-site parking conditions, but also a number of other factors, including mass transit and walkability and other impacts, demographics, et cetera.
Questions, Katie?
I'm just gonna ask the same question that I seem to always ask, about incentives, for people who will use mass transit, for people who won't have a vehicle, perhaps would use a bike, storage for bikes, things of that nature.
Yeah, it's a great question. We are part of our sustainability practice is not just the building itself, but we look at practice, and to us, that means what we can do to facilitate more sustainable lifestyles for our residents, which obviously has an impact on the surrounding community as well. We will, in this building, have a bike storage and maintenance facility that's fully conditioned and is accessible both directly from the street as well as internal to the lobby. That's in addition to bike racking that will provide out front in order to accommodate guests or delivery people to the building. We provide a free universal access pass to every one of our residents. We do this at our two other properties as well in Troy, which will enable our residents to use the entire CDTA system. That includes the bus rapid transit Blue Line, which is only a block and a half away from us. Interestingly, the Blue Line is only 2 years old, but it has the second highest ridership in the CDTA system. We see a strong demographic shift away from car ownership. For example, in 2017, there were 36 vehicles that could be purchased for under $25,000. Today, there are only 10. And obviously, price of gas and other things have gone up. We're also working with CDTA. I heard bike share was mentioned. The bike share, and there's traditionally been a station at the corner of 5th and Broadway or just off the corner. Everyone with the universal access pass will also get free access to those bikes if they don't own their own bike. And we're currently working with CDTA to station one of their car share vehicles proximate to the building. We had worked previously with Capital Car Share and actually hosted their first all-electric vehicle on 6th Avenue. We supplied the electricity for free in order to incent them to locate a vehicle there, which serviced the neighborhood, not obviously just our property.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Hang on a sec. Anybody else from the board have any questions at this moment?
Question from Zoom.
Yeah, a question. Hang on a second, because we have a question from the audience. Yes, please.
This is a question for you, Jeff. Jeff, this is Deborah Lockrow. Can you hear me? Here's my question. Your other two buildings downtown have fairly large parking What percentage of the tenants are using that parking? Like, is it fully used, all your parking?
It is not, but, and that of course varies. And one of the things we're looking at is there ways to, and this is way down the line, Deb, so, you know, but we're looking at potentially making some of those spaces accessible through an app that would allow folks to utilize some of those spaces that aren't necessarily residents, but I can't promise that's going to happen. What I can say is that in terms of looking at the demographics of the building, 40% of our studio occupants at the News don't own a car, versus 18% of folks who live in the building. So we see a direct correlation between our studio occupants and car ownership, or lower car ownership, as it were. And we anticipate that, you know, based on the fact that this building focuses more on that studio offering at a lower price point, that the level of autocentricity in our building will be substantially reduced. And that holds with projects we've studied in other markets.
So is this a hope or a certainty? Because I think the biggest concern here is you say 70 units and you're only up 17 parking. I live around the corner, and you know, parking is a hassle for a lot of people, a lot of businesses. So I think the number 70, and I understand you have 70 units because you have to make it cost effective. So it's your sense to do this. But I think, you know, aside from size of building, people are just saying, we're trusting you to say that, you know, a huge percentage of these people, whatever the percentage of 70 minus 17 is, what is that? 15% of the people are going to are not going to need to park. I just think it's a huge ask for the neighborhood for us to believe that. And I mean, I think it'd be less disingenuous if you said, well, you know, our other two places, we actually have some parking we could give to these people in case we're wrong, in case our study is wrong. So as neighbors, we are just looking at what we've lived with. You know, a 4-unit apartment has this many people. So while I understand why you want to do 70 units, you can see how it would, the neighbors are a little nervous about it because we live the reality of how much parking we have now.
Yeah, I certainly understand that. You know, I don't know if you've had a chance to review the TDMP. That's a public document, but we've done a pretty comprehensive study of both the off-street and the on-street parking. And you know, again, all we can do is do the best research that we can. And we've presented that research. We strongly believe, and it's also part of our mission, is to reduce autocentricity. But I think we've come up with a number of strategies that will certainly reduce any dependence on parking infrastructure. I would say this variance is necessary to preserve at least some on-site parking. So without it, it would potentially create a greater load on the public infrastructure.
Okay, we just want to make the point that discuss the setbacks on Union Street. If that's what you want to discuss, yes, because all this talk about, you know, it's more in tune with the planning commission than it is with us. Not that it isn't important, etc., but if you don't want to, you're going to talk about Union Street, correct?
Precisely about Union Street.
Okay.
And I think the illustrations up there now shows you why the developer just asserted that if he did structured parking in this building, it would have to be a story higher. What this plan shows you is that's completely wrong. By going over to Union Street, having parking on the bottom floor, they would actually have floor area to spare on top of that parking and could therefore reduce the height of the building. And the key thing about—
They don't want to reduce the height of the building, and that's not what we're here to discuss. We're here to discuss Union Street setbacks only.
The key thing about this is they have to show that there's a practical difficulty in meeting the zoning. It's not up to this board to decide whether the zoning is good or bad. Or good.
We have to show whether or not the building, right, it's going to meet the setback.
Oh, you have to decide. We know it's not going to meet the setback.
Yeah, and that's all we have to decide, whether or not we're going to get rid of variances. No, we're not deciding what we're.
Four is that they have to make a case in their application that there is a practical difficulty in meeting the zoning. If you believe them, you think there's a practical difficulty, you can grant them their variance. But if you don't believe them, you don't think there's a practical difficulty, you can't grant them their variance. And their attorney pretty much said, well, we sort of decided to do it this way because we prioritize Fifth Avenue over Union Street. That isn't what the zoning allows. Thank you.
Okay.
If I could just quickly respond, this is John
Very
Mapper again.
quickly, because we're
Yeah.
just going around in circles on something that,
Yeah,
I mean.
I understand. The point is, everyone acknowledges that there's a need for parking, and that's what this variance is about, to provide parking to reduce the impact on the neighborhood.
Okay, the other part that, and for me, someone who's lived in Troy my entire life and has spent a whole lot of time downtown, is whether or not Union Street should be considered a main street.
Right.
And the fact that there used to be a Union Station there back in the 18 and early 1900s with Mayfay and the servicemen getting off the train, has got, you know what I mean? That's long gone. So the fact that I would never, well, forget what I would never do. One of the matter is Union Street considered, in my mind, Main Street? Whatever, designated street, whatever you want to call it, as opposed to what we call Lansingburg, an alley. That's the case, but does it deserve the same amount of respect as Fifth Avenue does?
We agree.
It's the street from where these people live. So are we ready to vote?
Question from Zoom.
Secret.
Hello?
Chair. Oh, we had a question. for the Zoom.
Sorry, somebody else have a question?
Yes,
Who?
Wayne Thomas Oakes.
Where are you?
I am characterized as Wanda online.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, you know, you're the secret person. Okay, Wanda, we've heard enough. What do you have to say that we haven't already heard?
I heard an assertion that they want this new development's going to provide parking, but the actual fact is there'll be a net loss in parking. Because on the site right
Parking
now,
that we're considering, we are only considering whether or not there should be a setback on this property on the Union Street side. of it.
my
That's-
comment is related to that. My comment is related to that. And that is the developer has not considered alternatives that would be in compliance with the existing zoning. And secondly, there is the lawyer for the developer said that they're going to provide parking. They're not providing parking. The parking that's going to be provided is actually going to be a reduction of parking because the existing site provides 17 to 19 spots. Those spots are going to be taken away from the general public in the neighborhood.
Okay, but you, once again, whether he wants to put a tent in this area, the whole idea is whether or not we should get the setbacks on Union Street.
It alters the essential character of the community.
Discussion. We're not discussing this any further. Thank you. Do you have a secret?
Madam Chair, for PLZBA 2023-0033, I'd ask the board to find this proposal to be an unlisted action with sufficient information available upon which to make a determination that the project is not expected to cause significant environmental impact.
Do we have a second? Okay, Jack seconds on the motion. All in favor? Aye, opposed, carried. Do we have a motion on the application?
Okay, Madam Chair, for for PLZBA 2023-0033. I make a motion to approve the area variance for where the front setback, the maximum front setback of 43 feet and the minimum front setback of 26 feet. based on our discussion tonight, based on knowledge of Rosenblum and their comprehensive sustainability practices, I don't believe that the granting of this variance on Union Street will produce an undesirable change in the neighborhood. The benefits sought by the applicant, to me, going up a story to provide structured parking, even though it would be an allowed change. I do agree that the parking, the way it's proposed, is more feasible. I don't believe based on the studies that have been done, the traffic study, the comprehensive study that's available to the public, I don't believe that the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood will be adversely affected. And so for those reasons, I make a positive motion to approve.
Do we have a second? Okay, on the motion, Evie Dande,
Approve.
Jack McCann, Kathy Conroy, yes to approve, Katie McLaren. Okay, so the motion has been approved, and I would suggest to the neighbors and the representatives that you take your concerns to the planning board, where many more of them can be addressed than they could be here. Motion to adjourn?
I'll make a
Evie,
motion.
okay.
Oh, or I'll second.
Katie and Evie.
Done.
Yes,
All in favor?
yes, aye.
Aye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.